On. Hello, Avatar fans. I'm admin MrBKainX from the Avatar Wan Facebook page, and I'm joined by admins BH
Hi.
and admin Cliffjumper.
Hello.
And we are here to review the second episode of Avatar The Last Airbender, The Avatar Returns, which aired right after the first episode on February 21st, 2005. I'll start off by saying that this continues off as sort of a payoff to the last episode, and together they form like a strong premiere. We get to see the aftermath of the end of the first episode. They go back to the village. Grand confronts them that you've broken this rule, and then we get this sort of emotional scene where it's like Katara wants to go at first, but, she doesn't. Sokka reminds her, like, this is your family, your home, and Aang's like, that's fine, you should stay with your family, and he's like, oh, I'll go back and clean my room. So we sort of see that even after the end of the first episode, this whole idea that, like, it's been 100 years, or that the air nomads have been mostly killed off, really hasn't sunk in that much for this kid, and it won't until episode 3. And then later, of course, we get Zuko that comes in with, like, this imposing ship that crashes into the city. We get some comedy. We get just sort of, even in more comedic scenes, just sort of this sense that, like, Sokka is this one lone teenager trying to be the warrior for the tribe. Aang comes back. They get an interaction. He's kidnapped. They go on the ship. We get some really cool fight scenes, and that's one thing to note, that this episode has some fight scenes, and that's one thing. The first episode is sort of lacking in action, aside from, like, very basic training and Aang just hopping around. So we get to see that, and then just a great final moment where Aang's rising from the water and leaves with Sokka and Katara, and then hits the fire blast back, hits the iceberg, and all the snow and ice just, like, wrecks the ship. And as well as just, not to just be the guy that goes through the entire episode, but I gotta note, like, the final line, or one of the final lines is, that Aang says, I never wanted to be the Avatar, and I think that just says a lot for his character and what we'll see later. Anybody else want to say something? I don't want to take up the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's setting up the characters, which I really love about it. It's setting up Aang's character arc as this kind of, like, hesitant kind of hero of sorts, and it's setting up Sokka as this, like, sort of like warrior, kind of like he wants to be protective of his sister and his tribe, and he's really not great at doing it. And obviously for Katara, she's kind of the more motherly figure of the tribe. It's showing, her kind of as like a mother to Aang in a sense, that she wants to, help him out after basically he kind of saves them. And then of course Zuko, we get a little bit more about his backstory, or not backstory, but a little bit more of why he, like, is kind of hunting the Avatar down, to regain his honor. But yeah, overall, it's a really fun episode. A lot of action. It's very, very fast paced, which I love about it. The ending's great, where you have Aang kind of revealing that he never wanted to be the Avatar. It's just beautiful, great, really great animation, really great music in this one. We didn't break up the last one, but it's really, really good music, particularly in this one, and a lot of great lines. So overall, really, really good second episode. Definitely the payoff to the first one.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with, like, everything that was already said. It is much more of a payoff to the first episode. The first episode was, like, more of setting up what the world was and setting up the characters and stuff like that. And you do get a lot more character in this, and it's not completely devoid of story, but a lot of this episode is kind of just a chase sequence and a lot of action, and it's done so well. It's done so well. The animation, again, like, it's some of the best you'll ever see from a TV animated show. It's really, really sharp looking. Music's great. There's a lot of great like dramatic moments with the music. I think this is the first time we get the Water Tribe theme, and there's a lot of great scenes where like Sokka is like preparing for battle, and so is Zuko really but Sokka's on his own doing it because like he doesn't have any other tribesmen and stuff like that, and he's trying to prove himself. So like him being alone is actually, there's some symbolism in that, and like the Zuko, I like when Zuko is getting ready for battle. He's not by himself, but has servants to it, and it's like, oh, it's kind of hammering more of the fact that like he is royalty. He hear like a few moments in like first episode where he's just like, he's called Prince Zuko, and it's like, okay, he's the Prince of the Fire Nation. Okay, so it's like he has servants here, and I find it interesting because like later in the show we see that like Zuko kind of is alone. And it's not like a flaw with that moment where it's just like, oh, well, if Zuko's alone, then why does he have servants? It's like, well, that's looking too far into it. But like, just a lot of great lines too. Like one of my favorite lines, a lot of my favorite lines are like some of Zuko's lines, because like it's not just because he's my favorite character, but I think that like he really does have some good lines in this. Like the one line where he's just like, head of course to the Fire Nation, I'm going home. And like later on you find out like the depth behind that line and like what that really means and the emotion behind it. And I don't know, it always kind of brings a misty tear to my eye and I feel so good. And then there's like a great line that he says when Zuko is like on the deck of the ship with Aang, he's just like, this staff will make an excellent gift for my father. I suppose you wouldn't know fathers being raised by monks. It's writing like this that hooks you into the show. Like it's very nuanced. It feels very organic. It doesn't feel like lines that were written. It feels like before the writers made these lines, they said it in conversation. And it feels so real. Like the lines just feel so character, like they're dripping with character, and like it's soaked with originality. And I know that sounds like really pretentious. It's like, he's trying to think of different ways of saying how soaked and poignant these words are. Like I know it sounds like I'm being like really pretentious, but not a lot of like this. I think Chris too, and I don't know, it's just the writing, the dialogue, the action, which is amazing. Like they have a great scene, or great scenes, plural, where like Aang is fighting Zuko in his room on the Fire Nation ship, and it's like, okay, this is showing us, because these two air together, really it's just a great way of the writer showing us that there's going to be some small close quarters fights, much more kung fu based, but it's going to be very fast paced. And then like a few minutes later, it becomes a little bit bigger. It gets out at the side of the ship, like Zuko jumps on Aang, and like there's the Avatar state, and it shows you that like not only is there going to be like these smaller tight knit battles, but there's going to be some epic shit that's going to happen later. And yeah, it's a really good episode. There's not really much to talk about more than the first one. It doesn't really set up much more that the first doesn't. But yeah, it's so great. And these two episodes do feel like a really great like movie, like a mini movie. It's like a 45-minute movie, and it introduces everything so well, and it gets you hooked. So that's pretty much what I have to say about it.
Yeah, the first two are very symbolic of kind of like the whole show as a whole. Like the first one's like more quiet, a little more fun episode. Second one's far more action packed, a lot faster pace. So definitely, I think those two are kind of the two kinds of like types of storylines we get within the show. At least on Aang's part, Zuko deviates a little bit more with some darker stuff, but on the Aang side of things, I think it definitely is very, very symbolic of the show.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure
There's
what
not really
else
much
to
more
say.
to
It's
say.
just it's just a really good second episode, and it's like to air these 2 episodes in a row, I think was a really good decision. It gives people a bit of a payoff for the last episode, and like sees our characters go on our journey. And we don't know all the details yet, but we know, okay, they're gonna try and go to the Northern Water Tribe. They got to go through this giant Earth Kingdom, China, and that's gonna be the show.
China.
And then we see, like,
Giant.
Aang. He's talking about, like, going to a bunch of, like, oh, we gotta ride the hog monkeys here, and all that stuff.
Yeah, he knows all, like, the creatures. It's great.
And it doesn't make him unlikable. I think that's, like, a really important note, is that, like, adverse to what you might think, a character that needs to accept his responsibility, like, this early on, it works so well because, like, one, he doesn't really... The weight of who he is didn't really sink in that hard. I mean, like, we find out later that, like, when he first finds out that he was the Avatar, it sunk in and it hit him really bad. But, like, now that, like, he's out of the iceberg now and things have changed, he's kind of, like... He's still a kid, and when he says, like, in this part, we're gonna ride the hog monkeys and stuff like that, like, it makes him... in a sense, kind of adorable. Like, he's just this little kid, and it's funny when he says that, where he's just like, he just gets over this big talk with Katara and Sokka about, like, I never wanted to be the Avatar, and it's like, oh, we can learn bending together, and, like, his confidence starts to boost, and then he's like, well, alright, before that, we're gonna go do this shit. I love that. It makes me like the character a lot more, and it makes... Like, I feel like in another show, if that were tried, it would just make me go, oh, man, I thought he was supposed to accept his responsibility. But here, it just works for some reason.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what I have to say. It's just a really good 2-parter episode.
Yeah.
Really
Alright.
solid.
I think, unless anybody else has anything to say, I think we're gonna end it here. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the page and be sure to tune in for our review of Episode 3, The Southern Air Temple.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.